I am sure many of us began this journey with a grin on our face, getting excited to play something new, something that left a mark as when you stopped using the training wheels, but you have no idea how to take turns, inevitably crashing against a tree. And if that sounds a bit too personal, this happened to a friend of mine. The point is that every time I pick a game, especially from a series I have no idea about, a memory is created, even with bad entries, and that is one of the most magical moments while playing a game. Especially if you had the chance to begin at a younger age, because everything is new and exciting. I bring this topic because 10 years ago, one of my favorite games closed its servers, and I wanted to talk briefly about it, because while it was imperfect in so many ways, having lag, issues with matchmaking, weapons that broke the experience like swarm launcher, remote explosives, unstoppable tanks, flylocks, mass drivers, scramble rifles, tactical rifles, blue dots who had no idea how to play, corp mates who played like noobs, devs who didn't listen to the community for like 2 or 3 years, crashes, horrendous planetary conquest with 12 FPS. Where was I going with this? Yes, nostalgia. The questions for this video are: why do we feel nostalgia? Were video games better back in the day? Is there a way out of nostalgia? Let's dive into those and more topics. Every time you have a strong emotion with a particular experience, believe me, it is something you are going to remember for a good chunk of time. For example, think in every single video game you played when you jumped into this hobby. In my case, it would be with Donkey Kong Country 2, Pokémon Yellow, Mario Kart, Super Mario Bros., So It Is Mokushiroku, among others. Those are experiences I am not going to be able to recover as when I first played those games. Sure, it is possible to replay them, but it is not going to be the same. And the deal is that, as we grow and play other games, we will notice that plenty of them borrow ideas from here and there. Things like the double jump do not sound as exciting as when you first found about the idea. Now keep on playing video games for a good chunk of time, then as that you're getting older, responsibilities and stress start to grow, and most likely you will hit a point where you will say, "Shit, I'm old and unhappy enough to talk about nostalgia." That is effectively when your brain is like, "Jesus Chrysler, this dude is close to doing the Sayori every time a rope is seen. I cannot let this happen. Quick, I need a memory related to the event this person is leaving." Most likely, your brain looks at the image like, "How the f*** is that? No. I'm gonna use one of those Instagram filters. Let's do some tweaks here and there you go." It kinda connects with your unhappy you, and then it is like, dude, don't be unhappy. Cling to this tweaked memory of yours. Video games were better, simpler. They didn't hold your hand. You had a time, and most importantly, you were happier. In a really summarized way, that is how nostalgia kicks you in the back. Because this feeling can be so strong that some people start to cry when they get a really close connection with those memories. However, this is pretty much your brain trying to protect you from all the insecurities, stress, unsolved problems, etc. And that is why I open with 2 specific games, DOS 514 and So It Is Mokushiroku. When I first played this So It Is game, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I remember an extraordinary experience. Laughs, screaming, having a lot of fun. However, not so long ago I came back to check the game once again. It gave me like, the heck is this? It had an interesting idea, but it is a bad game. Obviously, the Instagram filter was in front of it, so I had to stare some more time, and things were clearer. I was playing with friends, and this game was enjoyable because of that. Okay, something similar happened when I heard about Vanguard. That me 2-3 years ago was quite happy, because the Instagram filter was on. But after playing Vanguard and getting to know it was going to be another crappy extraction shooter, that Instagram filter pretty much crumbled. Because I don't play with the people I met back in the day. A good chunk of them are just a memory. And most importantly, this game had a lot of problems. Imagine as when a politician says, "People will not go hungry. People will have jobs. People will have houses at decent prices," etc. What they forgot to mention is that the speech had a "my" before every sentence, so something quite similar happened with DOS 514. The idea was beautiful, but the execution was quite poor. And it is not worth bringing games like Mario Kart or Donkey Kong Country to the table, because they were really good for their time. So saying something like, "Yeah, games were better back in the day," at least if you pass through that nostalgic feeling, and you're kinda fed up with today's life's rhythm, then using really good games as point of comparison doesn't make sense. With this, I am not implying that today's video games are better either, don't get me wrong. Nonetheless, if you have followed the channel for a while, you know what is my opinion regarding these kinds of ideas. So, in a summarized way, you cannot be objective with video games. At the end of the day, it is a matter of taste, and every generation has had interesting things to remember. Because if we stick to this idea of games were better back in the day, then something like the 83 wouldn't have happened. In my humble opinion, there has always been masterpieces, good, bad, and terrible video games in each generation. Everything depends if you play those entries in a decent time. Partially that is the reason why I began the bit with those first experiences will leave a memory for life. The thing is that if you cling really hard to those memories, then everything around you will look great. However, it is perfectly fine to say that video games were better back in the day, if you do not live with that filter on autopilot. At the end of the day, it is your opinion, and that is respectable. It is okay if you enjoy chocolate ice cream. But if you say that video games were better back in the day, and you just play the same 4 or 6 things over and over and over again, then I am not so sure they were that good. Then maybe your childhood is better than your adulthood. There will always be points of comparison regarding old and current times. In some topics, it isn't even worth starting a discussion. For example, the average price of a house. I believe there's no debate here. Now, taking a look at the other side, and if you know a little about its race, then chances are that you heard how dogs use these things like there was no tomorrow. I do wonder what happened here, so now they look at you like, yeah, it is all good, pal. Of course, as everything in life, some things improve a lot, while others age like milk. With this idea on mind, it is no surprise companies try to capitalize on that idea, because nostalgia sells. We can refry a bit some stories, add some shiny effects, try to peel your sense of wanting to revive one of those first times, and ka-ching, ka-ching, easy money. And as we saw, when times are complicated, and we are still reflecting in our dumb actions from 2020, thinking that gamers will grow like house prices, bringing 1 or 2 remakes seems like a good idea. Despite all of that, at least to me, this is so far the golden era of video games, because it is relatively easy to play old or new games. And while I am an old fart who likes consoles and physical media, here I won't debate that los pecerdos have the advantage. A decent computer does wonders. But going back to the topic, is it okay to enjoy older video games? Yes, it is perfectly fine. Is it okay if I see everything as a waste of time and that there's nothing new to enjoy? If we just talk about video games, it can be normal. I mean, you don't need to enjoy something you used to like. We all change in different ways. Some people simply get rid of them and that's fine. However, if things start to lose color for you, then that is when we might have to worry a bit. But I'll talk about that another day. Now, I don't like to just point at problems without trying to give a possible solution. The fact that you feel nostalgic towards something on its own isn't that big of a deal. That has happened to me. There are video games where I have a close connection, or where I left a mark, and it is tempting to revive old memories. But this is where an objective might come in hand. Because sure, there are video games where I spent several years and at some point, things start to look grayish, especially when most of your friends stop playing those games, or when the servers simply got closed. But rather than moping around, I prefer to look at new horizons. While it is true that you cannot come back and enjoy some video games as when it was your first time, it is true that you can look around for new journeys. Now, I may be a bit radical on this front, but I like to challenge my brain. Sometimes I don't think too much between lines, and pick something that may attract my attention, especially if it is something I don't know that well. Because if I hear Shin Megami Tensei, The Depth Heaven, Resident Evil, Pokemon, there wouldn't be too much under the sun. Maybe aside from The Depth Heaven, cause they pull some weird gameplays that they still surprise. But the deal is that if I go to the store and see something like this, and a decent price, sure, count me in. You might have heard the basics, but this is a new journey you will explore on your own. The deal is that you need to embrace the experience, cause otherwise, perhaps you need to solve something else. Cause nostalgia oftentimes cling on trying the same things countless times, because that is something known. There is no risk. It is a safe space. And while it is cool to be inside that save room, feeling down, in the long run, that safe space may turn against you. In other words, it is better to take that risky step and try something to challenge a bit your gaming experience. The point is that you need to revive that sense of exploration. Yes, things may be grayish, but there is always something new to try. There are amazing stories and gameplays waiting for you. Or out of games, the same principles apply. There are always amazing adventures waiting for you to find them. I do wish you the best, and I hope you're fine. Thank you so much for watching.